As a counterterrorism veteran, a professional, I can tell you firsthand that the spreading of misinformation is not just a little nuance. This is a serious domestic safety risk. And recently, Dan Bilzerian appeared on the Piers Morgan Uncensored show and made a series of dangerous claims, kinds of falsehoods that don't just fuel division, they escalate into violence. Let me say it again. They escalate into violence, directly affect the safety of U.S. citizens and Jews abroad. And when misinformation takes its root, it destabilizes communities, fosters extremism, and creates an environment ripe for violence. And every time it spreads unchecked, it creates greater societal harm. And when amplified by people with large followings, it directly threatens our safety. This is especially dangerous with movements like Globalize the Intifada, which has turned into an international misinformation campaign, and the rhetoric being pushed can radicalize people and inspire violence, both here and abroad. Look what just happened in Amsterdam. After a football match between Ajax Amsterdam and Maccabi Tel Aviv, there was violent anti-Semitic attacks on Jewish fans. And these incidents show just how misinformation fuels real-world violence, destabilizing communities, and this affects innocent lives. Now, I don't usually talk about anti-Semitism unless it directly affects domestic safety. But when people like Dan Bilzerian spread dangerous lies that can incite violence, I feel compelled to get on the mic. And today, I'm going to confront these lies, and I'm going to explain why it's critical to address misinformation before it causes more harm. This episode of The Aaron Cohen Show brought to you by the Cherry's Deep Concealment Holster. Same holster I trained Keanu on for the John Wick franchise. Runs below the waistband, never going to fall off you. Carry concealed with comfort. Go to cherriescounterterror.com and get yourselves one of these holsters. It's an absolute beast. Let's get into it. Now let's start with Bilzerian's comments about the Holocaust. He questioned the well-documented fact that 6 million Jews were murdered during the Holocaust, insinuating it might be fewer.
Victimhood, given that 6 million of them were killed in World War II by a genocidal monster in the Holocaust. Do you not understand why that might make Jewish people feel that, yes, they have indeed been victims?
Yeah, I mean, that figure's been revised, but, you know...
What do you mean the figure's been revised? What do you mean?
Well, they said that it was 4 million that died in Auschwitz, and then they said it was down to 1 million. So they've revised the figure.
Well, how many people? How many people do you think were killed in the Holocaust?
271,000 that died in Auschwitz.
How many do you think were killed in the Holocaust?
I don't know, but I would bet my entire net worth that it was under 6 million.
Holocaust denial is a deeply anti-Semitic tactic used to rewrite history and minimize the suffering of the Jewish people. The 6 million figure is supported by extensive records, survival testimonies, and historical documentation. And denying it not only is factually incorrect, but it is also incredibly disrespectful to those who suffered. Holocaust denial is illegal in many countries because it contributes to hate and provides a foundation for anti-Semitism. I believe that it should be illegal here in this country as well. We'll see what happens with President-elect Trump and the direction his new administration and security team takes on that particular rhetoric. Next, Bilzerian described Hamas as a resistance organization, even calling one of its leaders, Yahya Sinwar, a hero. This is not only just a mistake, this is extremely dangerous. Have a look.
When you say that October the 7th wasn't as bad as people have said, what do you mean by that? Because from Hamas's own boasting through their GoPro cameras, they mutilated, burned alive, raped and abused, beheaded some people, set fire to homes. They kidnapped babies, they kidnapped Holocaust survivors, grandparents. They did just about every act of depravity it is possible to do. And they didn't just do it, they gleefully posted it on social media and the internet so that we could all watch in real time the horrors that they were perpetrating. It's hard to imagine a more horrific act than what happened that day. Why would you try to downplay it?
Well, I mean, there was only 2 babies killed from what I was told, and one was in the hospital, and the other one was shot by a bullet. There was no babies in ovens. There was no, beheaded people that I saw. The rapes were disproven. So all that was Israeli propaganda.
And listen, many people will listen to you and think that what you're spewing is bullshit propaganda from the other side. And the reason I say that is you say there was no raping or abuse of women, and yet the UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict, Pramila Patten, reported in March this year that there was clear and convincing information that Israeli hostages in Gaza experienced sexual violence, including rape, sexualized torture, and cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment, and reasonable grounds to believe such abuse is ongoing. There was also reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence occurred during the 7th of October attacks in multiple locations across Gaza periphery, including rape and gang rape in at least 3 locations. So when you say it didn't happen, what you're really saying is you think that the United Nations report into all this, which established it absolutely did happen and was horrific, is what? Is a pack of lies? And if so, why would the United Nations lie?
Look, I wasn't there, but I have, seen articles that said that it did not happen. So, if it did happen, that's terrible. Hamas is a resistance organization.
Hamas is an internationally recognized terrorist organization by the United States and the EU, the European Union, and many other nations. They're responsible for thousands of civilian deaths, targeting innocent people with zero regard for life. These people they claim to resist are ordinary civilians, and glorifying Hamas emboldens that extremist ideology and justifies their violence. I spent years in the counterterrorism world going after terrorism groups like Hamas. And let me tell you this, there is absolutely zero room for glorifying those who target civilians. Calling Hamas a resistance organization is a dangerous lie that legitimizes terrorism and puts millions of lives at risk. So why do people like Bilzerian fall into these conspiracy theories? There's actually a psychological draw to them, something that we need to understand if you truly want to grasp why such harmful narratives continue to grow. I want to discuss it. Have a look at this clip of Bilzerian talking about his research.
Just to be clear, you have absolutely no evidence that any Jews killed JFK, do you? Nothing.
There's been numerous documentaries tying the, Jewish mafia, the CIA. I wasn't there, but everything that I've seen evidence-wise points to Israel.
Here's the problem I have with this. You say everything you've seen, right? It just seems to me like you see a lot of conspiracy theory stuff. There is zero evidence that any Jews killed John F. Kennedy. Zero. I'm just curious why you want to be so inflammatory without actually having any evidence. And as you say, to just sit back and say, well, I wasn't there. Well, I wasn't there. Obviously, I wasn't even born. But I know that there's no credible evidence that Jewish people killed JFK. And yet you just say it as a fact, as if somehow we should just believe this.
So in the intelligence world where I come from, there's a deep understanding of psychology and human behavior. It's essential for us to understand how people think, what drives them, how we can predict actions or manipulate behaviors. This is how we target assets. This is why Israel's so good at confronting their enemies and taking out terrorist leaders like we've seen over the last year. It's how we recruit informants and flip individuals who could be key to intelligence operations that will thwart potential and future terror attacks. We study people's fears, their biases, and their insecurities, and their influences, and what influences their actions and beliefs. And this kind of study This isn't just academic. These are real-world consequences when it comes to security and protecting an entire nation, the only Jewish nation on the planet. Now, conspiracy theories operate in much the same way. They tap into fundamental psychological needs, the need for certainty, the need for control, and the need to feel part of something larger than ourselves. These theories offer simple answers to complex and often overwhelming issues. They make the world feel less chaotic and give a sense of order when there is none. And that's why people like Bilzerian are drawn to them. Conspiracy theories feed into the human desire for certainty. They provide a very clear narrative and villain. And when life gets complicated, when we feel helpless or uncertain, it's easier to believe in a theory that explains everything in very simple terms. And in a way, it's like a psychological shortcut. It's a way that makes sense, things that seem beyond our control. And this is where it becomes dangerous. People like Bilzerian who are attracted to these theories because they make them feel like they have access to the truth. Gives them a sense of exclusivity. A sense of being in the know. And it's powerful. And it's part of that addiction that Bilzerian's been feeding for many years. And this need to feel special or unique is a very powerful motivator for someone who's built an entire public persona around being different, rebellious, and above the norm. This need to be seen as different and in the know is part of what makes conspiracy theories to people like Bilzerian so appealing. But it doesn't just stop there. When these theories are amplified by people with influence, like Bilzerian, they begin to form an echo chamber where others start to believe it. They're part of the club. And the psychological draw, that belonging, it's a sense of power and superiority over those who are blind to the truth. But the reality is, all they're doing is spreading confusion, fear, more hatred, and in some cases, leading people down dangerous paths. So Danny boy, little Danny, you're not just telling lies. You're feeding into a psychological game that has consequences. And people who believe in these theories can act on them, just like we've seen in the intelligence world, where individuals who feel betrayed or disenfranchised can be manipulated into taking dangerous actions. And the cost of your need to feel special, Danny boy, and important is much higher than you realize. And as someone who once tried to become a Navy SEAL and fight terrorism worldwide, Dan, it's clear that you've lost your way. And maybe it's the pain of not being good enough to make it into the SEAL teams. Or is it the sting of being rejected because you didn't have what it takes? It's cool, man. I get it. It's not for everybody. In fact, it's not for most people. Special operations is a very small world. You were looking for something to prove your worth. But when that door closed, you turned to a different path. One that's less about service and more about selling your brand. And we saw how that went. Dan, I think that the SEAL community knew this about you. I feel like the instructors understood this pretty early on. You couldn't handle the discipline and the camaraderie and the sacrifice, and instead you turned yourself into a brand. A loud, flashy, gambling character whose actions were about you, not the mission, Dan. And you turned to platforms that let you sell this distorted version of your idea of strength. And it's about being noticed, but not taking on the burden that comes with that true responsibility. You want to be seen as a warrior, my friend, but warriors don't chase the fame. Anachnu mishartim. We serve. And you, Dan, have proven time and time again that you're not interested in service. You are interested in validation. Let's not ignore something else going on here. The paranoia, the over-the-top behavior, the grandiose claims about being in the know. This can be a side effect of coming off the steroids and all that growth hormone. You looked a little smaller in the interview. And when you've been on those substances for years, I think you said 9 women a day was your average. It's only one way to keep up. They amplify the sense of power, but when you come off those high crashes and the body goes through withdrawal, the paranoia and the sense of being watched becomes a very natural, real psychological response. And Jordan Peterson can speak to that a lot better than me. But it makes people feel like they have to keep pushing the narrative, keep selling themselves as that truth teller, because in their mind, everyone's against them. And it becomes a way to cope with those intense highs and lows that you've been through. And in your case, Dan, it feeds directly into these dangerous conspiracy theories and these walls that you've been building up around you for years. I want to thank you guys for watching. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember, in the end, the truth will always win. Appreciate you guys for watching. I'm Aaron Cohen. This episode was sponsored by the Cherry's Deep Concealment Holster. Same holster I trained Keanu on for the John Wick franchise. Runs below the waistband. Great for the BJJ crowd. If you need to go hands-on, you don't want this thing falling off you because of where it runs, BWB, it is never going to come off, so it's great for that de-escalation. Go to cherriescounterterror.com and carry with comfort and proper concealability. I'm Aaron Cohen. I will see you on the next one.